All right, missed that one because I was turning on the streaming. So I'll say good morning to everybody. We seem to have reasonable propagation this morning. I've talked to boats in Fiji, Tonga, and Vanuatu down there in Tanna. This is Patricia and David, Gulf Harbour Radio, and we have very unpleasant weather, and we're a little bit on the tired side because our bedroom faces the west, and every now and again overnight we had a tremendous downpour. We've actually had 6.2 millimetres since midnight, but instead of just being a nice steady drizzle, it was just a burst in as the CBs floated past us. We have 13 degrees, 1-3. Now, I bet that makes you all enjoy where you are, even if it might be a bit swelly or windy. 10 knots from the west to southwest here, and 1002.9 steady on the bar. So, lots of stuff to cover today. David's got quite a big program. He wants to talk about CAPE today, in addition to this very difficult, murky weather window and the general roundup of what's going on in the islands. So I'll just see if there's anyone that wants to, probably, I don't think we've got anybody at the moment. Quite a few people waiting to leave. My list is growing from Whangarei and Opua, Tauranga, Nelson. Lots of people want to leave this rather unpleasant weather that we have got. I suspect Excel are still in Nui Tuputapu. There was a report from Suzanne this morning. She's actually, it might be a bit old, I think, because the longitude is the same as it was when she called in yesterday. So that might be a bit of an old report. Anyway, is there anybody that wants to call in? Please try now. Nothing heard, and I have just talked to Andrew. For those that are going to take the plunge on Sunday, he has volunteered to give a call so that we can find out where you are before you get back into our radio area, which usually is about 30 degrees south. Talking about weather, just going on to some news now. There was quite an interesting article and a picture, actually, of what looked like a weather event in California. A huge blob on the weather radar there turned out to not be a storm. It was a swarm of ladybirds, and it was about 130 kilometres wide over sort of around the San Diego area.
From ladybugs.
Ladybugs?
Yeah.
Well, this was from America. It said ladybirds, so you're just out of date. You need to go home for a refresher.
They have wings.
They do have wings, yes. Anyway, they come into the valley from the Sierra Nevadas to eat the aphids and lay their eggs. But in early summer, when the aphid numbers decline, they get hungry and they migrate to higher altitudes, about 5,000 to 9,000 feet above sea level. And that's where the radar picked them up. There were so many of them, and it just looked like a big storm. It was quite an interesting picture. So there you are. Well, Mr. Trump is back in the news again. It was a very, very moving, this wasn't about him, but anyway, the ceremony, and the Brits do ceremonies and commemorations extremely well. The one from Portsmouth yesterday was absolutely fantastic, and of course it's probably the last one Queen Elizabeth will be at, or the last significant one, and the fact that she was working during the war just made it all the more poignant. And they had about 150 men who from the States and England and all various places that had actually done the landing in Normandy. So it was actually quite an amazing event. Unfortunately, the weather held off. It was not so good now today. Anyway, back to Mr. Trump. He's thinking of putting a 5% tariff on all the goods from Mexico. Boy, it's going to be expensive trying to get stuff into the United States, what with the enormous tariffs from China. Anyway, he wants to encourage them to stop the flow of immigrants into the United States. In May, 144,000 people were stopped by the US Customs and whatever they call themselves. and it's the highest total in 13 years. It was up 32% from April. But, of course, his own party even is not all that keen because it will affect, this tariff will affect quite a few US jobs, in fact, and US companies that get stuff done in Mexico. I always remember going to the United States to work and thinking, oh, I trotted down to Sears, which no longer exists, and went and bought a whole pile of electrical things, of course, because I couldn't bring them with me, and bought a Hoover, which we all knew about, was a good American brand, and looked at it and it was made in Mexico. Actually, I had to leave all the stuff at the counter because they wouldn't give me a Sears card because I didn't have a record over there. I thought, well, anyway, back onto where were we? Oh, Saudi Arabia. Wow, Saudi Arabia has seriously upgraded its ballistic missile program thanks to the assistance from China. Would you believe it? Boy, they're an interesting country, aren't they? They have an arms race with Iran competing to dominate the region, and that's, of course, a big concern to everybody that doesn't really want to see a lot of stuff like that going into the area. But China has decided to support them, and I guess that will be a bit of more consternation for the US. The car industry. There was a proposal to merge Fiat Chrysler with Renault. It's been called off. It would have been the third largest car company in the world. The French government owns 15% of Renault, and it would only support the deal if it guaranteed jobs and the auto plants in France, and I guess that couldn't be guaranteed. Nothing can be guaranteed in the car industry these days. So that was called off. Staying with the US, LA evidently has 59,000 people homeless living in the streets, tent cities, and all the rest of it in the county, and 36,300 are in the city. The mayor wants about 42 million to address the problem. He should get together with our Auckland mayor because we have a bit of a problem. Nowhere near as large as that, but certainly I think virtually every major city in the world has a homeless problem. But in Auckland it is becoming a concern because we have a lot of very high-end retailers in places like Queen Street, and it's actually quite dangerous to walk there at night time.
Yeah, well, Los Angeles is popular because of the climate down there. That's always been the case. Anybody who doesn't really have a home or whatever, it's a lot easier to sleep when the temperature's moderate than when it's snowing.
Well, I suppose that would be true, but even in Philadelphia, when I lived there, people would sleep over the vents, the exhaust vents for the buildings. Southeast Asia has a huge pig problem. They have culled millions of pigs because of African swine fever. This started in China and Vietnam it was about August last year, but it's spread. Cambodia, North Korea, Hong Kong. In Cambodia, the pig farms have virtually been devastated. Thailand, which is Asia's second biggest producer of pig meat, is on red alert. So I would suggest nobody buys any pig meat for a while. But you just never know where it ends up. On the communications area, Huawei, or Huawei, I don't know really how to pronounce that. We'll have to get one of our Chinese cruisers to.
Who cares?
Huawei has signed a deal to develop a 5G network in Russia. I actually thought that they had their own 5G. I must have been thinking of Estonia.
Well, that's what we were told.
Yeah. Anyway, I was thinking of Estonia, which is incredibly developed. They were going into 5G when I was there last year. Okay, and this next item really, really disgusts me. The US Department of Energy plans to reclassify some of the nation's most radioactive nuclear waste by lowering the threat level. And this is all being done to save $40 billion in cleanup costs. I mean, geez, it's either a danger or it's not. You don't just change the numbers to suit yourself, but that's what they're doing. Hopefully, well, that's the proposal, and hopefully there will be an awful lot of a reaction to that. I would certainly react if I was over there. Okay, I am going to cut short the news now because I know we have a lot to cover this morning weather-wise, and that's of more interest, particularly for those that are shivering in their boats in New Zealand. Is there anybody that wants to add anything? And by the way, folks, if you have a particular interest in any aspect of news around the world, I try and sort of see what's happening, but obviously it takes a fair bit of time. So if you want to direct me in a certain area, then please do so. I'm happy to look at whatever interests you guys. Anybody with anything, please call. I'm just scanning through here. Northern Bay on Corro Island, thanks non-stop, 95% low cloud with rain showers visible between us and Vanua Levu. A light southeast breeze. Flying Fish is back at Port Vila. We've got water maker problems. Calm, overcast drizzle. Oh, it's not very nice everywhere. Mezzaluna, good morning, Jeff. Vianney Bay, about 40% cloud cover. And a good signal there, thank you. In Citrus Tart, not so bad. Up there in Opua. Oh gosh, in Lupan, Savu, that cloud again. 24 degrees up here though. Thank you very much. Well, it does sound as if it's not exactly tropical everywhere, but certainly not as bad as here, although it has stopped raining. I am going to pass the microphone now because we have a lot of weather to cover. Here's David. I said that before, did I? Oh, no. You're fine about it.
Yes. All right. Well, good morning, everybody. And not a lot of change to yesterday's prognosis. The two main players are the complex low that's east of New Zealand, and we've been talking about that now for a few days, and the huge high that's over Melbourne at the moment. Now, this is a 1038 monster, and the swash zone that is in the Tasman, quite nasty. These two big systems coming together there, they're making some pretty high winds and seas heading north, so it's not surprising that a lot of you up in the islands are noticing that. Troughs still prevail over New Zealand for sure. Plus, we have a cold front that's lying across the cruising routes, just smack dab right across it. We know that there are probably, as Trish said, about 25 yachts primed to head north. So we'll get to the forecast for northern New Zealand. We still have gale warnings for sea areas Kaipara, Brett, and Colville. This means 35 knots, and first from the northwest, then it's going to swing around to the southwest. Now, inshore seas, probably about 3 meters. Today, plenty of rain. You could expect thunderstorms in this. Winds probably are going to stay southwest 30 on Saturday, and then they're expected to ease 20 knots on Sunday. Then they will start to diminish later on Sunday. So 20 knots in the morning, and then as the day rolls on, they'll slowly come down. Now, the mesoscale models, different models from what you're looking at, tell us that by lunch on Sunday, we could expect southerlies about 10 to 15. A little bit less than the formal forecast, but I'm sure it's very good words for those that want to take off on Sunday. Now, UK Met is calling for the huge high that we're talking about to move onto the cruising routes on Monday and basically deflate, sort of like puncturing a balloon. The central pressure going to drop down to 1024 millibar. That's from 1028. Now, to 1038, I mean. So the upper ridge really is losing its downflow. That's the cause of that, if you're wondering. So the upper ridge had been fairly prominent, but it's deciding that doesn't want to do that anymore. So we're getting a decline in the downflow. Now on Tuesday of this coming week, GFS and EC are both calling for a polar dip. And I know you've seen it because we've gotten your emails, and we appreciate that. The axis, well, it's more or less as predicted, sort of on a line from Fiji to North Cape, give or take on that line, but that's pretty much what it looks like. That means northeast winds east of the axis, and they'll be in the 15 knot range. When you get up to around 30 south, I see mostly easterlies. Now also Monday, Tuesday, expect a convective band near 25 south, plus convection possibly running up and down 170 east. So it's not all roses out there, that's for sure. Okay, those departing Sunday, you may have erred in a pretty good direction, although there's a chance for a weak band, a convective band, to roll over you with, like I say, convective activity. Now, as you head north, the winds are going to back, so that you're going to be headed a bit, unless you're going to Vanuatu or New Caledonia, where that's a pretty good passage. The wind directions are in pretty good shape. Now, you may also decide you'll do the arc that we talked about. It's kind of swinging west before you come back east again to avoid the winds on the east side of the polar dip. Now, some of you, though, may wait until Wednesday or Thursday of this coming week as the next ridge rolls over New Zealand. Then you could expect 15 knots southwesterlies. And in addition, going to Minerva is, well, that would be a better trip if you left Wednesday or Thursday. Actually, leaving on Thursday may be a bit milder. Chameleon, us, being conservative, old, and all that, we might pick Thursday, I think, as departure from New Zealand. But I have a hunch many of you are going to make your break on Sunday. And good luck with that polar dip. We'll report it on Monday. But if you leave, you won't hear us. But those of you that stayed will find out what actually happened over the weekend. Now, up in the tropics, our trough still lies over the Solomons, been there all week. Then the axis tracks between Vanuatu and New Caledonia. Then it goes on to just south of Fiji, skirts Tongatapu. Now we've got another trough that runs from near Tuvalu, a little bit to the east of Tuvalu, towards Samoa, and then it tries to hook up to the trough that's near Tongatapu. Now, one other thing, over the Santa Cruz Islands, I'm picking up another one of these blind disturbances. I can call it an MCS, you remember that word? Mesoscale convective system. So this is a cluster of CBs. They're very cold, very high, very broad in area. They're moving southward. So they're certainly something to keep an eye on. I certainly will. And this is the sort of thing that could develop into a tropical disturbance if it continues to go as it's been. Over to Tonga now. Well, the trough lies nearly over Tongatapu, just to the south of it. And the question is it going to continue north? So the winds today look to be mostly south-southwest early this morning, and then a little bit later turn southerly. Now, I think we're going to see, hang on one second. Yeah, what's going to happen is, I think, looking at this a little bit closer, up in the Babao area, they may turn a little bit towards the northeast. That's not a good sign because that means those winds are going to collide with the southerlies, and that's going to lend more credence to that trough sliding north. So in my opinion, yes, I do believe the trough will slide north. Now, Tongamat doesn't say any of this at all, but that's sort of what it looks like, supported a bit by the wind directions that I'm picking up. So on Saturday, tomorrow, winds for the Hawaiis look like south-southwest about 15 to 20, and southerlies there on Sunday. None of the mean winds look particularly strong, but there could be some surprise gusts in that for you. So I think if you're exploring the Hawaiis, you might give some thought to moving up to the Babao area, just in case that trough does come in. and it gets a little bit uncomfortable. There are areas of protection in the Himalayas, not a lot of them, but once you get up into Babal, there's plenty of places to hide if things don't look so good. Now by noon, Monday, expect east-southeast winds to about 20 knots, with this elusive trough looking like it's going to be in the New Potatoes area. But on Tuesday, I think it's going to come back to the group. And so here comes the trough on Tuesday. That's what it looks like. Now Fiji looks okay now on imagery. The trough right to the south is still there. It's active. Scattered cloud from this trough is definitely pushing up into the group, getting scattered showers here and there. I think the trough is going to move north. Fiji Met doesn't think so. They don't say anything about it at all. Winds today, light to moderate southeasterlies. Tomorrow they veer a wee bit. Expect south to south-southeast, maybe getting up into the 20-knot region. Sunday the winds ease south-southeast in the 15-knot range. And on Monday, it looks like east-southeast around 15. Now Tuesday, we could see major convective activity. That's the trough again. The trough now, went north, and at least in my opinion, it went north. Then I believe it's going to drop south again, back over the group, and probably invigorate a little bit at that point. So we'll have to see on this. This is going to be early next week, but many of the models are picking this up, so we'll see what happens. Vanuatu is just to the east of the other trough that we mentioned earlier. Cloud and showers look like they'll drift over a lot of the group today. We're getting reports from you that you are getting some showers already. A fair bit of wind too, actually in the open water. I see southeast 20 to 25 up and down the group. If you're in Port Vila, you aren't going to see that kind of wind, but outside it could be a bit breezier. I also see winds 30 knots west of Santo. Nobody's going to be out there, but there is an area of high winds in that area. Now, about the same thing on Saturday, and by Sunday, we may have an ease. Looks like southeast winds about 15 to 20. Now, Newcastle, they're also getting cloud and showers from the same trough as Vanuatu. Satellite imagery shows this quite clearly. Winds in our area, the southern lagoon area, southeast 15 to 20. In the Loyalties, a bit more, 20 knots, gusting up to 30. And north of Nemea, 20 knots and gusts 30 there as well. So quite a bit of wind just north of Nemea. That's common, very common. Saturday, southeast, I'd say at about 20 knots, partly cloudy. And Sunday, southeast 15 to 20, and a chance of showers. And I almost forgot sea conditions. Sunday now, this is for the Southwest Pacific, 3 to 4 meters once you get up to 33 south if you're leaving New Zealand. And they are mostly from the southwest. However, near New Zealand and up to that point, the seas are a bit jumbled. We've got southeast swell bumping into southwest swell. So it's going to be a bit confused and probably a little bit uncomfortable, even though they're not very big. Monday, 2 to 2.5 meters from New Zealand all the way up to 28 south. And then it picks up again. It's a little bit higher, 3 to 4 meters at 25 south to 20 south. So there you go. It's an area.
Good direction.
Yeah, it's a good direction, but it is an area of higher sea, and it's just a moving target, if you will, and that'll eventually diminish. Well, what I'm going to do now...
We'll ask for questions on that if you're going to go on to Kate.
Yeah, we'll ask the questions after I do this. If you do have questions on what I said, you can come, please, in a minute. I'm going to cover a mini lesson, if you will, so those who don't care, you can tune enough. But Kate, a number of people have called in and asked about Kate. Now, those of you that are getting Predict Wind, that's one of the features that they offer. Now, that stands for Convective Available Potential energy. Now, for those who use Predict Wind, Buoy Weather, Weather Zone, there's a number of other sites, you can obtain the CAPE numbers. And this is a useful tool, quite frankly, the CAPE measurement. And the values that you see are in joules per kilogram of air. And that is actually a predictor for thunderstorms, thunderstorm activity, or virtually any severe weather. And it's going to give us a measure of really how buoyant the surrounding air is. How easily does it want to rise? Now, just slightly technical, a joule is just a unit of energy, and it relates to, in our case, the ability to move a mass of air. So we're interested, is the mass of air going to go up or is it going to go down? And if it goes up, is it going to be difficult for it to go up? And if it is difficult to rise, we're going to have a low CAPE number. And if it's very easy to rise, we're going to have a high number. And I'll give you some numbers in a minute. You can write these down. Now, in fact, I'll do it right now. So if you're looking at any of these charts that I talked about, if the number is less than 300, then we're looking at mostly stable conditions, very little or no convection at all. But if it's 300 to 1,000, you could expect weak thunderstorm activity, and we would call this marginally unstable. And if we're between 1,000 and 2,500, quite possible severe thunderstorms, and we'll call this moderately unstable. And then 2,500 to 3,500, it is very unstable. Expect severe thunderstorms. And if we're over 3,500, it's extremely unstable and definitely severe thunderstorms and a very, very good chance of tornadoes. So you can find these CAPE values using the internet, of course, and looking at the sites that I mentioned. There's, like I say, a bunch: Buoy Weather, Weather Zone, Predict Wind. They all show this. But you can look yourself by examining the temperature and dew point on a special graph called a tephogram or a SKU-T. Now, these graphs are the result of the weather balloon launches that occur at least twice daily around the world, or satellite data. So there's two ways that we get this information. So basically, what we want to know is if the atmosphere is stable, neutral, or unstable. So I'll give you a couple of examples. Let's say on a warm day, a parcel of air starts to rise from the surface. And if it keeps going up, it means that it's warmer than the surrounding air. It's less dense. So we will call this unstable. So I think you can picture that pretty easily. Another example is, say our air parcel starts to rise, but a new air mass comes in caused by upper level winds, and this air mass is a little bit warmer than our rising parcel. Well, our rising parcel now, it stops, puts on the brakes, quits rising, and we call this stable. Neutral conditions means that any given air parcel doesn't want to go up, doesn't want to go down. So if you were to go to a site called Weather Online, so those of you that still have the internet, go to Weather Online Expert Charts. And once you do that, take a look on the left side of what you're seeing. Choose the Pacific area, Pacific. Then at the top right of what's on the page, under the word soundings, pick temps. Stands for temperature, temps. Then choose on the left, go to the left side of the page again, what country you are interested in. As an example, the offerings are usually Fiji, New Caledonia, the Marshalls, that sort of thing. And if you pick that, then up pops the SKU-T, the chart. Now, the dark red line is the temperature of altitude. So the way the chart is, it goes from the surface to way up to the troposphere. And it gives you the heights in millibar. Now, there'll be a red line that goes from the surface and it zigzags up. with altitude. Now, that is the temperature. The blue line, the dark blue line, is the dew point temperature. What we're interested in is the red line. Now, there are two other lines that you'll see, and they're important. You'll see a light red line, and that's called the dry adiabat for technical purposes, and the light green is the wet adiabat. Now, I'll give you a quick way to see how stable the air is at different altitudes. If the deep red line, the temperature line, runs to the right of the light red and green lines, the parcel is stable. If it leans to the left of the light green and the light red, it's unstable. So this actually is what I do when I mention that I'm looking at a particular area and I make a statement that it looks like it's unstable to me. So that's what I'm looking at when I say that. Now, there's a lot of other interesting information on the weather zone charts, and there are various other indexes for those that are into the weather. For instance, the K chart, the total totals chart, the lifted index chart. All of these can be used for forecasting extreme weather or unsettled weather. And I think maybe in the future I'm going to explain what these are. And I'm really happy to say that I'm getting quite a few emails that people are looking at this stuff. So this is great. This is what this whole net is about. People getting control of their own destiny, learning about the weather, and finding out that, yes, we can predict it ourselves. We don't need a weather radar. And not that I have anything against them. So there you go. That's CAPE. And again, readily available on the charts that you're getting, and very useful. In fact, it will be very useful in a couple of days when you're looking at Tonga and Fiji, when we get that convective activity that I'm talking about. You look at the CAPE charts and you'll see, oh, yes, they are showing that. Okay, that's it for me.
There's
Any questions or comments? Come now.
What was the name? What was the name? Was it tetragram or skew? How do you spell skew?
The skew T is SKEW, SKEW dash T. They call it that because the lines are skewed. And when you go to those charts, you'll understand what I'm talking about. A tetragram is virtually the same chart, a little bit different. The way they present the lines on there, just a little bit different from the skew T. Some of these sites offer the skew T, some offer the tetragram. It doesn't matter. What I gave you, how to look for stability, is the same on both. So that's something you can do if you've run out of things on your Kindle. Here's the boss.
Yeah, well, it doesn't look as if Chameleon would be going in the weekend, but we'd probably have to do something like that. I got about 3/4 of the way through that until you went to the example, and I think I'd have to bring it up on the computer and follow it through. All right, is there any questions or any comments? There's been a marked silence from those in New Zealand on the streaming as to what they might do in the weekend or next week, except for, I think it was Citrus Tart, I'm thinking of later in the week, I think, yes, Monday or Tuesday. All right, is there any question? Oh, a remarkable silence. You put them all to sleep.
I did.
You did.
Did it again.
I did it again.
Let me get to my board. I'm going to get a little chalkboard
Another
here.
chalkboard edition there. Sleep again. All right, folks, I have a very good weekend. We will be here, of course. It doesn't look as if it's going to be a very wonderful weekend in New Zealand, but it couldn't be worse than the last couple of days. Have a good weekend. We will be back on Monday, and for those that do leave, just listen out. You won't hear us if you're on your way, but Eye Candy Andrew has kindly offered, and I know there's a couple of other good, strong stations up there. Jeff, there's a Luna, and we've got Diego and Vanuatu, and we've got Pilgrim there. Actually, there's a lot of good, helpful people. We'll see what's going on, and we'll talk to you on Monday. Have a good weekend, everybody, and for those that need it, GH Radio at extra.com.nz. extra is XTRA, and there's stuff on the, well, I won't be doing much on the computer because my computer's going away again today to download everything from one hard drive to another. So cheers everybody, have a good weekend, we're clear and the frequency's all yours. Yeah, good morning Chris, go ahead. Oh, it's actually not too bad. There's quite a bit of noise around here because of all this weather, but clear, readable 5 actually, and moderately strong, over. Okay, cheers, have a good weekend.